What would you do if you sat at your own holiday table, hungry and in pain, while your son-in-law bragged that he had put you in your place? How far can a quiet father be pushed before he stops trying to keep the peace and starts using the rules everyone else ignores? Can one Thanksgiving dinner turn into the moment when an old man calmly shows his family who really holds the keys, the house, and the pension? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Peter, and I am 63 years old. I never thought I would tell my story on the internet, but I guess I need to say it somewhere. It is easier to write it to strangers than to say it to my own family. I am a retired construction supervisor. For almost 40 years, I woke up early, checked plans, walked through noisy sites, and came home tired but proud. My hands are not gentle, my back hurts when it gets cold, and I sometimes forget small things, but I have always been good with numbers and rules. I am used to plans, contracts, and structure. That was my life. Now I live in a quiet street in a small house I bought with my late wife. We paid for every brick step by step. We always dreamed that when we retire, we will sit on the small porch and drink tea while our grandchildren run in the yard. She did not live to see that. I did. But the picture looks very different from what we imagined. My daughter, Lisa, and her husband, Trent, live with me in this house. It started as a kind gesture. They were young, they needed help, rents in our city are high, and they wanted to save for a future home. When they first moved in, I told myself it was temporary. I thought it would feel like a full, warm house again. I told myself it would heal the silence after my wife passed. At first, it did feel nice. I heard footsteps, laughter, smell of coffee. I woke up early and made breakfast for them before they went to work. I enjoyed simple tasks, washing dishes, fixing a loose handle, mowing the lawn. They called me caring. They said I was a rock for them. Those words felt good. Over time, something changed. I do not remember the exact day when it happened. It was not like a storm. It was more like slow rain that never stopped. Small jokes about my age. Small signs that the house did not feel like mine anymore. New decorations I never chose. Boxes and clothes left in my old room, on my chair, on my desk. Trent is 35. He works in sales and always walks like the room belongs to him. He likes strong handshakes, loud stories, and eye contact that lasts a little too long. People often see him as friendly and confident. I saw that too at first. He promised to take care of Lisa, to give her the life she deserved. I believed him. Maybe I wanted to believe him. He also has another side. At home, he likes to make small comments. He calls them jokes. He says them with a smile, so that if I react, he can say I have no sense of humor. He calls me old man when he wants to get a reaction. He says it is just a playful name, but his tone has a thin metal edge. The first clear sign that something was wrong happened at a simple dinner in our house, months before the Thanksgiving I will tell you about. It was a weekend evening. The house smelled of roasted chicken and garlic. I spent half the day in the kitchen, chopping vegetables slowly because my hands are not as strong as they used to be. I set the table myself. White cloth, simple plates, my wife's old candles. For me, these small details still matter. We were expecting 2 of Trent's friends and 1 couple from Lisa's office. I wanted things to look nice. I thought, if the evening goes well, maybe they will see me as a normal part of the family, not just Lisa's father who lives in the back. When the guests arrived, Trent took the role of host at once. He opened the door, shook hands, laughed loudly. He explained to everyone that I was the chef of the house now. He said it in a way that sounded kind on the surface, but then he added that I cook because I have too much free time and need tasks to stay busy. They laughed. I smiled softly and said nothing. We walked to the dining room. For years I always sat at the head of the table. It was not a rule, just a habit. My wife used to sit to my right, Lisa to my left. It felt like a small center of our world. That night, when I moved toward the head of the table out of habit, Trent gently tapped my shoulder and told everyone that I should sit at the corner because it was easier for me to get up if I need something. He said that I should sit near the kitchen door so I do not have to walk too far. He smiled as he said it, but his hand pressed lightly on my back, guiding me away from the chair at the head and toward a smaller chair at the side. He did not ask. He arranged. The guests smiled politely and took their seats. Lisa gave me a short look and then looked away. I sat at the corner. I felt like part of the furniture. Dinner started. Trent poured wine and told a story about his job. He likes to speak about big deals, difficult clients, and how he dominates every meeting. He described how he once pushed a client to sign a large contract. He said that some people need a strong hand because they are weak and indecisive. His friends nodded and laughed. Then he changed the topic. He told them about a recent conversation we had about money. He said that I was afraid of modern life and did not understand investments. He told them I complain when bills are high and act as if money is to be locked away forever. He used his hands like he was drawing a cartoon of me in the air, shoulders hunched, fingers counting coins. He said it lightly, but the message was clear. I was a burden and an obstacle. What he did not say was that I pay most of the house costs. The mortgage is long gone because my wife and I paid it. The utilities, the food, the small repairs, the insurance. Most of it still comes from my pension. He does cover some things, yes, but not as much as he likes to suggest. He continued. He told them that he tries to teach me new ways to think. He said he even suggested that, if times got tough, I could move into the garage and turn the main bedroom into a home office and gym for him and Lisa. He said it as a joke. He laughed. The others gave polite smiles. I felt my ears ringing. Lisa sat next to him. She did not correct him. She did not tell them that the house is mine. She did not mention that her childhood bed still stands upstairs, in a room I keep almost exactly as it was. Instead, she said in a calm, soft voice that Trent only wants what is best for everyone and that I should relax more and let go of control. I looked at my plate and moved peas around with my fork. My chest felt tight. I thought of my wife and how she would have reacted. She would have defended me. She would have spoken in a quiet but firm tone and reminded everyone whose roof they sat under. But she was not there. I was alone with my own silence. At one point, one of Trent's friends tried to lighten the mood. He raised his glass and said that I was lucky to have such strong young people taking over. He said that it must be hard to give up power. He did not mean harm, but his words still cut. I had never thought of myself as someone who held power. I just worked, paid, and cared. Later, after dessert, I started to stand up to clear the plates. It is just a habit from years of family life. Before I could get fully up, Trent put a hand on my shoulder and pushed me gently back into the chair. He told the guests that I should stay seated because of my age and that he did not want another fall. Everyone laughed. I had never fallen in this house. I realized in that moment that he was slowly writing a new story about me, and I was not the author. I stayed seated. They collected plates and went back and forth between the dining room and the kitchen. I felt like a decorative piece that no one wanted to move because it would spoil the picture. At last, the guests left. The front door closed, and the house went quiet. Lisa went upstairs to change. Trent sat on the sofa with his phone, checking messages. I stood near the window and looked at our small front yard, lit by the street lamp. The grass was a bit overgrown near the edges. I used to be proud when it was perfectly cut. Now I felt too tired to care. A few minutes later, I heard the front door open again. I turned and saw Mrs. Rivera from the house next door. She is a small woman with gray hair and sharp, kind eyes. She has lived there for many years, so she knew my wife, and she knows our family well. She stepped into the hallway and asked quietly if everything was all right. She said she had heard voices earlier and saw the guests leave. Her eyes moved slowly from my face to the dining room and back, as if she could read the air. Trent stayed in the living room, pretending not to listen, but I knew he heard. I told her that everything was fine, just a little loud, nothing serious. I used the standard phrase we all use when we do not want to speak. She looked at me for a long moment. Then she nodded and said that if I ever needed to talk, her door was open. Her tone was light, but there was a weight under it. She stepped closer and, without making a big scene, pressed a small card into my hand. She said that it was just a local advice center, that they help older people with paper things like bills, documents, and housing questions. She added that sometimes it is good to know our options, especially when we live with others. She kept her voice neutral. I felt my face flush. I wanted to tell her that I was not weak, that I did not need help. At the same time, there was a small warm feeling in my chest because at least one person saw that something was not right. After she left, I went to the garage. It is the only space in the house that still feels like mine. My old workbench stands against one wall, covered in tools, nails, and bits of wood. In the corner, there is a metal drawer with a stiff handle. Inside, I keep all my important papers. The house deed, my pension letters, old insurance documents, some photos, a few letters from my wife. I sat on the small stool next to the drawer and turned on the weak yellow lamp. I opened my hand and looked at the card Mrs. Rivera had given me. It had the name of a local legal help service, a phone number, and a simple line in small print that said they help people who feel pressured or unsure about their housing or money. Next to me, on the workbench, lay a small stack of unopened envelopes from the pension office and the bank. I had put them there weeks ago, telling myself I would read them later. They looked ordinary, but in the garage light they suddenly seemed important, like quiet voices waiting for me to listen. I placed the card on top of the envelopes and sat there for a long time, just looking at that small pile of paper, feeling something inside me slowly begin to change. The next morning, I woke up earlier than everyone, like always. The house was quiet, just the ticking of the old clock in the hallway and the soft hum of the fridge in the kitchen. I stood by the sink, rinsing cups from the night before. The card from Mrs. Rivera sat on the windowsill. I kept looking at it while the water ran over my hands. The words on it were small and simple, but they felt heavy. Help with housing and money. Support for people who feel pressured. It was strange to see my life written between those lines. As I made coffee, I started to think about how we got here. It did not happen in one day. When Lisa first told me about Trent, she sounded happy. She said that he was charming and that he made her laugh. She said he was ambitious, that he wanted to go far in his career. She told me that he liked my work story, that he respected people who had built things with their hands. At that time, I was just glad that my daughter had someone. She had lost her mother too young, and I worried that she carried that empty space inside her. The first time I met him in person was in a small cafe near the bus stop. He arrived a bit late, but with a big smile, like he brought the sun with him. He reached out for my hand and held it longer than normal, telling me that he had heard a lot about me, that he respected my work and my years. He spoke with energy and looked straight into my eyes. I remember thinking that maybe he really did value older people. Later, Lisa told me that he had said nice things about me after that meeting. She said that he admired my stability. That word stayed with me, stability. At the time, it sounded like a good thing. After they married, they moved into a small rented apartment across town. It was old but cozy. The walls were thin, the bathroom was narrow, and the tiles in the kitchen were cracked. I still remember the smell of paint when we first went there. I helped them paint the living room. My hands were careful around the edges, like I was drawing their future with a small roller. 3 days before they moved in, Lisa called me in a worried tone. She said that the deposit and first month's rent were more than they expected. She said that Trent's bonus was delayed, that some bills came at the same time. She did not ask directly, but I heard the pause in her voice. I knew that pause. It was the same sound she made when she was a child and wanted something but felt shy to ask. So I offered to help. I told her that I could cover the deposit and the first month and that they could pay me back slowly. She sounded relieved. She said that I was saving them. She promised that it would be just this once. Of course, it was not just once. First, it was the deposit. Then it was a new washing machine because the old one in the apartment broke. Then it was help with a used car because Trent's job needed long drives. Then it was a small loan for a laptop so Lisa could take a course and try for a promotion. Each thing on its own made sense. They were young, starting from zero. I had my pension and small savings. I told myself that this is what parents do. Each time I helped, they thanked me, at least in the beginning. Over time, the thanks became shorter. The requests became more direct. The pauses in Lisa's voice turned into clear statements about things they needed. I remember one evening sitting in their small apartment at a cheap table made from pressboard that I had put together myself. The air was warm because the radiator would not turn off. Lisa told me that the rent was going up. She said that the landlord wanted to raise it again next year. Trent leaned back on his chair and said that it made no sense to throw money into rent when there was a house waiting for them. He meant my house. He told me, in a very calm tone, that the logical step was to move in with me for a while. He said that it would help everyone. They would save money, and I would have company. He said that the house was too big for just one man. He said that my wife would have wanted me to be surrounded by family. He tied his idea to my memories of her, and that hurt more than anything. I agreed. I thought it would be temporary, 6 months, maybe a year. I did not make clear rules. I did not write anything down. I trusted my daughter and her husband. I trusted words and feelings, not documents. They moved in. At first, they were careful. They asked before moving furniture. They helped with shopping. They brought bread and wine. They called it a team effort. They put their wedding photo on the shelf next to the photo of my wife and me. I thought it looked nice together. Then time passed. 6 months turned into a year. 1 year turned into 2. Somewhere along that road, their language changed. They stopped saying that they were staying with me and started saying that we share the house now, as if the walls had changed names by themselves. The list of bills on the fridge grew. Trent started to take care of some of them from his account, especially the internet and his phone. I handled the rest. Heating, water, taxes, insurance. The main weight still sat on my shoulders. I did not mind at first, but I noticed that he spoke about the bills like they were his. He told his friends that he was carrying a household. I watched, and I let it pass. One afternoon at the small cafe near the bus stop, the same one where I first met him, I sat with an old coworker from the construction company. He asked how retired life was. I told him in simple words that I was busy with family. He laughed and said that I must be rich if I could support a whole house on a pension. I shrugged and said that we all manage somehow. He looked at my face and asked if everything was really fine. He noticed the dark circles under my eyes. He saw the way I kept checking my phone. For a second, I almost told him the truth. I almost said that I felt like a guest in my own home, that I was afraid to upset my son-in-law, that I was tired of arguing over money, but the words stayed stuck in my throat. Instead, I said that I was lucky to see my daughter every day. He nodded, not fully convinced, but he did not push. When I came home that day, I walked into the house and heard Trent in the living room, talking on speaker with a friend. He did not know I was near the door. His voice was relaxed and full of himself. He told his friend that he did not worry about housing like others did, because he already had a place. He said that once the old man slowed down, everything would naturally transfer to them. He said that this was how life worked. Older people step aside, younger people take over. My chest felt tight. He was speaking about me like I was a piece of furniture that would someday be moved out for free. He spoke as if my home and pension were already his by right. He did not say my name. He just called me old man, like I was a category and not a person. I could have walked in and told him that the house was mine alone, that nothing would naturally go to him without my decision. I could have shouted or argued. Instead, I stayed in the hallway and listened. I heard my daughter laugh in the background at something else. I stood very still until the call ended. Later that week, they both sat with me at the kitchen table. Lisa had her laptop open with a budget spreadsheet. There were many numbers, colored in yellow and red. She said that costs were high for everyone. She said that food, gas, everything was more expensive. She had a list of things they needed: car service, a short trip to rest, new gym membership, some home upgrades. She spoke softly, but the meaning was clear. They wanted me to cover more. She said that I had a good pension and fewer needs. She said that I could help them save for a real future, maybe even a down payment one day. Trent added that I should think of it as an investment in family. He used that phrase many times. I looked at the numbers on the screen. I know how numbers work. I knew very well that the real problem was not the world outside, it was how they spent. But when I tried to say that maybe they should cut some extras, Trent leaned forward and stared at me with that long stare of his. He said that I had an old way of thinking and that I should trust him with modern life, because he understood it better. That night, I sat again in the garage, near the metal drawer with my documents. I did not open it. I just sat and looked at it, like a dog that knows the door is closed but still stares at the handle. Days passed. Small things added up. My tools moved without asking, my favorite chair taken over by Trent's clothes, Lisa speaking about our house rules as if I was not part of the hour. Each moment was small, but together they formed a heavy cloud. One evening, after a long day of small tasks, I was upstairs in my bedroom when my phone buzzed. It was a message in the family group chat. The chat photo was a smiling picture of the three of us at a barbecue from the first year they moved in. I opened it. Trent had sent a message about maximizing space. He wrote that he had an idea to turn the garage into his private gym and office. He said that it was wasted space right now, and that with some changes he could make it his own area. At the end of the message, he added that if money got tight, the old man could always sleep in there. Then he added a laughing emoji. Lisa replied with a small happy face. She wrote that it was a creative idea and that they could talk about it more later. I sat on my bed, holding the phone, looking at that short line about me sleeping in the garage like a guest in a storage room. For a moment, it felt like the floor under me was not solid. When I read that message about the garage, something inside me went quiet. Not loud, not hot. Just very, very quiet. I put the phone down on the bed and looked around my room. The walls still had the same color my wife chose many years ago. The small photo of her sat on the bedside table next to my glasses. The old wardrobe stood in the corner. All of it felt like a thin shell around me, and outside that shell, people were already talking about moving me to the garage like moving an old chair. I slept badly that night. I woke up many times and listened to the sounds of the house. A tap in the bathroom, the soft vibration of a phone in their room, the wind outside. I felt like a stranger camping inside my own life. The next few days, I tried to act normal. I made breakfast, took out the trash, checked the mailbox, folded laundry. Lisa talked about work. Trent talked about a new project at his company and how he needed a space at home to focus. He did not ask me again about the garage. He spoke as if the idea was already agreed, like weather that would come sooner or later. Then came the day when everything crossed a line. It started with a bill. I was in the kitchen, sitting at the table with a cup of tea. I had spread several envelopes in front of me: electricity, water, insurance. I opened each one slowly and wrote the numbers on a small notepad. When I added them up, the total made me frown. The costs were higher than usual. I looked at the bank statement and saw large card payments at sports stores, restaurants, and some online sites that I did not know. I heard Trent come home earlier than expected. The door closed with a quick sound. He walked into the kitchen, took a bottle of water from the fridge, and looked at the table. He saw the bills and my notepad. He asked in a light voice if I was doing old man math again. I took a breath and told him calmly that costs were going up and that we needed to talk about money. I said that some of the charges were quite high and that maybe it was time for him and Lisa to cover more. His face changed a little. The smile stayed, but the eyes did not. He leaned against the counter and crossed his arms. He reminded me that he paid for the internet, his phone, some groceries. He said that it all balanced out. I replied, still in a calm tone, that it did not balance, and I slid the bank statement across the table toward him. He looked at the numbers and laughed softly. He said that I did not understand how the modern world works, that these were normal amounts, that life is expensive. I answered that I understood very well how numbers work. It was my job for nearly 40 years. I said that if they wanted to use the garage and live here for years, we needed clear agreements. Then I made a mistake, or at least he saw it as one. I added that the house was still in my name, that I had worked my entire life for it, and that I was not ready to be moved to the garage like storage. His jaw tightened. He did not like hearing the words, my name, and my house. He said, in a louder voice, that he and Lisa also had rights here, that they built a life in this house, that he put his energy and time into it. I told him that I respected that, but I would not be pushed aside. The air in the kitchen grew heavy. He walked closer to the table. I stood up slowly, my knees stiff. We were now very close, almost the same height. I could smell his cologne. His hands were on his hips. He told me that I was making things harder than they needed to be, that I should be grateful to have young people taking care of the place. He used the phrase, knowing when to step back. I answered that stepping back was my choice, not his. My voice stayed low, but my words were steady. I also said that I was thinking of speaking to someone about my options. For a moment, there was silence. Then he smiled, but it was not a friendly smile. He said that if I wanted to play with rules, I should be careful not to trip over them. He brushed past me, his shoulder hitting mine harder than needed. I reached out to steady myself on the back of the chair. He turned around again and pointed to the papers on the table. He said that I make everyone tense with my numbers and my old views. He said that I should stop acting like the boss of the house. Something in me snapped into place then. Not anger, not fear, just a clear line. I told him that I was not trying to be boss. I was simply the owner, and that there was a difference. My voice did not rise, but each word felt like a brick. His face lost all softness. He stepped toward me so fast that I did not have time to move away. He reached for my arm, the one closest to him, and grabbed it just above the elbow. His fingers were strong. He pulled me a step back, away from the table, and told me to stop talking like that. The pain came quick and sharp. My shoulder and elbow both complained at once. I tried to pull back, but his grip only tightened for a second. I felt something inside my arm protest, like an old rope pulled too hard. Then he let go and took a step back, saying that I should not raise my voice in his house. His house, that is what he said. I stood there, holding my arm, feeling heat spreading under the skin. My heart beat fast. I was more shocked than hurt in that first moment. Lisa came in from the hallway. She had heard the raised voices. She saw my face and the way I held my arm. She asked what happened. I told her in simple words that Trent had grabbed my arm and that it hurt. My voice shook a little. Trent spoke before she could answer. He said that I had lost balance, that he tried to steady me, that I twisted wrong, and that now I wanted to blame him. He rolled his eyes as he told his version. She looked from him to me. For a second, I thought she would see the truth in my eyes. I thought she would remember all the years I carried her on my shoulders at the park, all the nights I sat with her when she had a fever, all the small sacrifices. Instead, she sighed and said in a calm voice that we were both too tense. She told me that I should not provoke him about money and control, that it was not good for his stress level at work. She said that Trent did not mean harm, that he just had a strong way of expressing himself. She asked me to sit down, not because she cared about my arm, but because she wanted the argument to end. I sat. My arm throbbed. Trent walked away with the air of someone who had won a small battle. Lisa put a glass of water in front of me and patted my shoulder in a distant way. She told me that I should rest and avoid long talks about finances for a while. She used the word peace several times. When she left the room, I stayed there alone. I looked at my hand. My fingers could move, but lifting the arm higher than my chest sent a jolt of pain into my shoulder. I took slow breaths. In that quiet kitchen, with the light falling on the stack of unpaid bills, I finally understood that this was no longer a normal tension between generations. This was something else. That evening I sat in the garage with a bag of frozen peas pressed against my upper arm. The cold made my skin sting at first, then go numb. My eyes wandered to the metal drawer again. I thought of my wife. I imagined what she would say if she saw our son-in-law's hand on my arm and our daughter's silence. I knew then that I could not just wait for things to fix themselves. Waiting had only made them worse. The next morning, my arm still hurt. I could not lift the kettle with that hand. Lisa looked at it and suggested I go to the clinic, but her tone was more practical than caring. She said that if I did not check it, I would complain later, and she did not want to hear that. I nodded. Part of me was grateful anyway, because I needed the visit for more than the pain. At the community clinic, the air smelled of disinfectant and paper. I sat in the waiting room among posters about healthy eating and seasonal vaccines. When the nurse called my name, I followed her into a small room with a narrow bed and a desk. The doctor was a middle-aged man with calm eyes. He asked what happened. I told him that someone at home grabbed my arm during an argument and that it hurt since then. I did not use strong words. I just described the action. A hand on my arm, a pull, pain. He examined the area carefully, pressing his fingers in different spots. I tried not to show how much it hurt. He said that it looked like the tendons and muscles were strained, maybe a small tear. He asked if this was the first time someone had handled me roughly at home. I hesitated. The question floated in the air between us. Finally, I said that it was the first time my body paid this price, but not the first time I felt small. He looked straight at me and said that I did not have to stay in a place where I felt unsafe or constantly pressured. He offered to write a detailed report of the injury in my file. He also said that if I ever needed to talk to someone about my situation at home, the clinic could connect me to social workers or legal help. His tone was careful, respectful. I agreed to the report. He dictated details to the nurse, date, type of injury, my description. He did not use loud words, but the simple facts still felt heavy. He printed a copy and gave it to me in a small envelope. He told me to keep it safe. When I left the clinic, the sky was gray. I stood outside for a moment, holding the envelope in my good hand. The paper inside felt like more than medical information. It felt like a small shield. On the bus home, I took out my phone. My thumb hovered over many names. Lisa, Anna, my niece, an old coworker. At the end, my thumb stopped on the new contact I had added days before, the number from Mrs. Rivera's card. I sat there, the bus engine humming, people talking around me. My arm ached. My heart felt strangely calm. I pressed the call button. When the call connected, my hand shook more than my voice. A calm woman answered. She said the name of the legal help service and asked how she could assist. I told her that I was an older homeowner, that my daughter and her husband lived with me, and that things at home felt wrong. I did not know how to describe it better. She listened without interrupting. Then she asked a few simple questions. Did I own the house? Was my name on the papers? Did I feel pressured to give money or control to anyone? Had there been any incident where I felt physically unsafe? I swallowed and said yes to each question, slowly. I told her about the hand on my arm and the pain that followed. I told her that I had just visited the clinic and had a short report in an envelope. She said that someone at their office could meet me, that they worked with people in my situation often. She offered a time the next day. I agreed. At the end of the call, she told me that it was good I reached out, and that I had more rights than I maybe believed. When I got off the bus, I walked home with the envelope under my jacket, close to my chest. The sky was low and heavy, and the air smelled like rain. As I turned into our street, I saw Mrs. Rivera sweeping the small path in front of her building. She looked up and saw my arm in a simple support bandage the clinic had given me. Her eyes darkened with worry. She asked softly if I had seen a doctor. I said yes. Then I told her, in short words, that I had also called the number on her card. She nodded once, very slowly, as if she had been waiting to hear that. She said that I had done something important, and that I did not have to tell my family yet if I did not want to. Then she went back to her sweeping, leaving my dignity in place. At home, the atmosphere was strange. Lisa asked about the clinic and the bandage. She wanted to know if there was serious damage. I told her that the doctor said I must rest the arm for a while and avoid lifting heavy things. She replied that this was inconvenient for the household, and that we would all have to adjust. She did not ask again how I felt. She just wrote a new list on a sticky note for shopping and told me that she would order more prepared meals to save effort. I wondered whose effort she was thinking about. Trent barely reacted. He glanced at the bandage and then at my face, as if checking whether I would say more about what happened. I did not. I kept my voice level and my movements slow. He seemed to relax, as if he believed the matter was closed. The next day, I went to the legal aid office. It was in an older building near the center, on the second floor. The hallway smelled of paper and coffee. There were posters on the wall about tenants, pensions, and family rights. The waiting room had simple chairs and a table with old magazines. A man in a neat shirt came out and called my name. He introduced himself as Mr. Collins. His voice was calm, and he spoke slowly, as if he had time for each word. We went into a small office with a desk, 2 chairs, and a tall cabinet full of folders. There was a window that looked out on a busy street, but inside the room it felt quiet. He asked me to tell my story from the beginning, not just the incident with my arm, but also the years before that. He wanted to know when my daughter and her husband moved in, who paid which bills, who owned the house, how decisions were made. I talked for a long time. I spoke about my wife, about the house, about the way we invited Lisa and Trent in, at first with joy. I told him about the slow change of tone, the jokes, the money talks, the message about the garage, the argument in the kitchen, the hand on my arm. From time to time he made notes. He did not interrupt. When I finished, my throat felt dry. He pushed a glass of water toward me and let silence stay in the room for a few seconds. Then he asked if the house deed was in my name. I said yes. I told him that I had it in a drawer at home. He asked if I had ever signed anything giving Trent or Lisa part ownership. I said no. He asked if I had a will. I said yes, but that I had not looked at it since my wife passed. He then explained something simple but powerful. As long as my name was the only one on the house papers, I was the legal owner. No one could decide where I slept, who lived there, or how the property was used without my consent, unless I signed those rights away. He also asked about my pension. Was it in my account alone? Did anyone else have access? Did I pay bills directly from it or through a shared card? I told him that some of the household costs were paid with my card that Lisa and Trent sometimes used, and that I had not checked all the statements in detail. He nodded slowly. He said that this mix of money made it easy for others to act as if it all belonged to them. He suggested a few steps. He said I could open a separate account where my pension would arrive, only under my name. From there, if I chose, I could send a fixed, clear amount to a shared account or to Lisa, but I did not have to give full access to everyone. He did not tell me what to do. He listed options and told me what each one would mean. He said that I had choices. That word felt new in my mouth. At one point, I took the small envelope from my pocket and placed it on his desk. I told him that it was the clinic report. He looked at it but did not open it right away. He asked me if I felt comfortable with him reading it. I said yes. He opened it carefully and read the short description of my injury, the date, the doctor's note about the force and the way the arm was pulled. He put the paper back into the envelope and looked at me. He said that this document mattered. It was not just about pain. It showed that something passed a line at home. He said that if needed, this paper could support a request for protection. The word protection sounded heavy to me. I had always seen myself as the protector, the one who came home dirty and tired from work so that my family could feel safe. Now the roles were reversed. Mr. Collins asked if I wanted to press any criminal charges right now. I said no. I did not want to see my daughter's husband in that place, not yet. I told him that I wanted respect, not drama. I wanted to feel safe and not be used. That was all. He understood. He said that there was more than one way to protect myself. He suggested that we focus first on my property and my money. He proposed that I gather all important papers, the house deed, the will, recent bank statements, pension letters. He said we would look at them together and see what could be done. Before I left, he gave me a simple list written in clear letters. Documents to bring, bank to visit, numbers to note. He also wrote their office phone number and a direct line to him. He told me that I did not have to decide everything right away, but that I should not delay too long either. When I stepped outside, the air smelled of street food and exhaust. People walked fast, carrying bags and phones. I felt strangely steady, like I had placed one stone on solid ground after walking on mud for too long. From the legal aid office, I walked to the bank. Inside the branch, the floor was clean and shiny. There were screens on the walls showing smiling faces and short lines about financial plans. I took a number and sat in a chair near the window. The bandage on my arm made me hold my documents carefully in my other hand. When my number was called, a young manager invited me to her desk. She asked how she could help. I told her that I wanted to open a separate account for my pension under only my name and that I wanted to check my recent statements. She looked at the screen and confirmed that my pension currently went to an account that was also used for many card payments. She printed several months of statements for me. The pages showed line after line of charges, supermarkets, fuel, but also sports equipment, bars, online shops I did not know. Seeing them all together made my head spin a little. She asked if everything was all right. I told her that I lived with family and wanted to have more clear control over my money. I did not give details. She nodded and helped me open a new account. She entered the change so that future pension payments would go there. She explained how I could transfer money out when I chose. When I left the bank, I had a small folder full of papers. In my bag, I had the clinic report and the list from Mr. Collins. In my hand, I had the printed statements. It felt like I was gathering small stones to build a wall between me and the slow river that had been carrying me away. I walked to a nearby park and sat on a bench. The trees were almost bare, and dry leaves moved on the path in small circles. I took out my phone and scrolled to my niece Anna's name. Anna is my sister's daughter. She lives in another part of the city. She visits sometimes, but not often. Still, she always speaks to me with warmth, and she asks real questions. I hesitated, then pressed call. She answered with a cheerful tone, then fell quiet when she heard my voice. She asked if everything was fine. I told her that things at home were not fine. I told her in simple words about the change in tone over the years, about the pressure with money, about Trent's plan for the garage, about the argument in the kitchen, about the clinic, about the visit to the legal aid office. For a moment she said nothing. Then her voice came back, firm and gentle. She said that she was not surprised. She had seen small signs before when she visited. The way Trent took over conversations, the way Lisa left tasks for me as if I was staff. She said that she was proud of me for going to the clinic and to the legal office. She told me that I had every right to set limits in my own house. She reminded me that I still had family outside those walls, that I was not alone, no matter how they made me feel. Her words warmed my chest. At the end of the call, she told me that if I ever needed a place to stay, even for a short time, I could come to her. I thanked her, even though I did not know yet whether I would accept. When I got home that evening, the house looked the same from the outside. The small garden, the step my wife and I had painted together, the familiar door. Inside, the atmosphere felt lighter to me, not because anything had changed, but because I had started to move pieces on my side of the board. Lisa and Trent were in the living room watching a show. They glanced up as I passed, then turned back to the screen. I went to my room, placed the new folder in the metal drawer, and locked it. The sound of the lock closing was soft but clear. Later that night, I sat at the small desk in my room with my phone in front of me. I opened the calendar app to check upcoming dates. Work days, clinic check, legal office follow-up. My eyes stopped on one entry in late November. Thanksgiving dinner at home, already added by Lisa weeks ago. She had written, "Family Thanksgiving, big dinner," with a small leaf icon. I stared at it for a long time. The idea formed slowly, like a shape behind fog. A day when everyone would be at the table, a day when the roles were clear and full of pride, a day when words mattered. My thumb hovered over the date. I opened the entry and added a small private note only I could see. One word, meeting. Then I highlighted the date in red. The week after I marked Thanksgiving in my calendar felt strangely calm on the surface and very sharp underneath. From the outside, my life looked the same. Inside, almost everything had shifted. I followed the list that Mr. Collins had given me. One by one, I took out the documents from the metal drawer in the garage and placed them in a simple folder. The house deed, my old will, pension letters, bank statements. I sat at the small workbench and checked each paper under the weak yellow light. The house deed still had my name alone. Seeing it printed there, on official paper, gave me a strange comfort. It was like hearing my own voice in a room where I had been silent for too long. The will, on the other hand, felt like a letter written by a different man. It still spoke about a future with Lisa and Trent as if they were the same kind people from the first months. It did not know what I knew now. A few days later, I went back to the legal aid office with the folder under my arm. The stairs felt less steep this time. I had already walked this path once. The receptionist greeted me like an old client. Mr. Collins called me into his office and asked how my arm was. I told him that it still hurt, but a little less. He spread my documents on the desk in neat lines. He checked the deed, the will, the bank statements. He took his time with each, asking small questions here and there. He pointed out that the will gave Lisa and her husband a direct path to everything: the house, the savings, even small personal things. He said that this was written before the situation changed. He then spoke about choices. He explained that I could adjust my will, that I could create conditions, that I could decide who would handle the property if something happened to me. He mentioned Anna as a possible person of trust, since she had already shown care and distance from the current house tension. He also spoke about something that sounded very dry, but felt important: formal notices. He said that, as the owner, I had the right to set clear written terms for anyone living in my house. He said that these papers did not have to be hostile. They could simply state that the roof over their heads depended on basic respect and safety. We did not go into all details that day. He did not push me. He asked me to think about what I really wanted, not what would cause less noise today, but what would let me sleep with a calm mind next year. He said that we could meet again at a notary office or courthouse to sign whatever I chose. After that meeting, I called Anna and asked if we could talk in person. We met at a small cafe not far from the city center. She arrived with a worried look, but when she saw that I was standing upright and breathing steady, she relaxed a little. I told her more than I had told her on the phone. I described the bills, the way Trent controlled the mood in the house, the message about the garage. I told her that I planned to adjust my will and some other papers. I asked if she would be willing to be involved, not for money, but as someone I trusted to keep things fair. Her answer came quick. She said that she would stand by me. She said that she did not want my years of work to end in a story of pressure and fear. She promised that if I named her in any role, she would honor it with care, not greed. Hearing that eased something tight inside me. With her help, I also took one more step. We walked to a small building with a sign offering simple rentals. The rooms were basic. Clean walls, single bed, a wardrobe, a small table, nothing special, nothing warm. But when I stood in one of those rooms, I felt a strange freedom. I decided to rent a small studio on a quiet street not far from the main bus line. The contract was simple and short. I signed it, arranged a modest monthly payment from my new account, and took the key. The metal was cold in my hand, but it felt like a second spine. Over the next week, I moved a few things there in small steps. I carried a box with old photos, some clothes, my favorite tools, a few books, a set of simple plates and cups. I did it when Lisa and Trent were at work. If they asked, I said I was clearing the garage. That was not a lie, just not the full story. In the studio, I made the bed with clean sheets, placed my wife's photo on the small table, and put my documents in a drawer next to it. Standing in the middle of that tiny room, I realized that if the house fell into noise and arguments, I would not be trapped. I had somewhere to go that had my name on the door and quiet around the walls. Meanwhile, the house life continued its strange dance. Lisa talked more and more about Thanksgiving. She made lists of guests, dishes, decorations. She wanted it to be a special, big family event. She invited Trent's parents, a couple of his work colleagues, and one of her friends from the office. She even invited Mrs. Rivera for dessert later in the evening, saying that it would be nice to include the neighbor. She never asked if I wanted this. She just announced that Thanksgiving would be at our place, meaning the house, and that everyone expected a festive dinner. When she spoke about the event, she sounded proud, as if she and Trent were the ones offering a home to everyone. Trent took over the tone. He talked about the menu, about carved meat, about wine. He said several times that this dinner would show people what kind of home they had built. He spoke as if the walls themselves answered to him. Each time he used the words "our house," my jaw tightened, but I stayed silent. It was not the time yet. A few days before Thanksgiving, I went with Mr. Collins to the notary office. The building was near the courthouse, with long corridors and heavy doors. The room where we sat had a large wooden table and shelves full of thick books. The notary was a quiet person with small glasses and steady hands. We went through several documents. Some were new, some were adjustments of old ones. I read the main parts slowly. I did not need to know every legal phrase. I just needed to be sure about the direction. My name stayed where it mattered. New names appeared where trust was needed. Conditions were written in plain letters. When the notary pointed to the lines where I had to sign, my hand did not shake. My bandaged arm was still stiff, so I used the other one. I placed my signature slowly but firmly on each page. With every line of ink, I felt less like a guest in my own story, and more like the person holding the pen. Later that day, Mr. Collins and I sat in the courthouse lobby for a short time. People went in and out of different rooms, some with worried faces, some with relief. We talked quietly about what the next steps could be if the situation at home became worse. He mentioned that if I ever wanted, I could ask for formal help from local officers to support a boundary in the house. He did not push me to do it at once. He simply made sure I knew that this door existed. When I went back home, Lisa was in the kitchen, surrounded by recipe notes. She complained about how much work the dinner would be. She said that she would need help with shopping and cleaning. She told me that I could handle some simple tasks with one arm, like preparing vegetables or setting the table. I agreed to help where I could. I moved slower, but I did not resist. I wanted them to think that nothing important had changed. Trent seemed relaxed. He spoke about the dinner like a stage where he would shine as head of the family. He did not know that another stage was being built behind his back, made of paper and signatures. On the day before Thanksgiving, I went once more to the studio. I brought a small suitcase with clothes for a few days, my shaving kit, and some basic food. I left them there neatly arranged. Then I sat on the bed for a while and listened to the silence. No television, no raised voices, no footsteps above my head. Just quiet. I sent a short message to Anna, telling her that everything for my backup place was ready. She replied that she was glad and that she was thinking of me. She added that if I needed her on the holiday, I just had to write or call. I also sent a message to Mr. Collins. I told him that Thanksgiving dinner would start at a certain time in the early evening, that there would be several guests, including Trent's parents. I said that tensions had been high but quiet on the surface. I asked in careful words what support could be present if things crossed another line. His answer came soon. He wrote that he could be nearby during the dinner if I wished, with some necessary papers in case I chose to use them that day. He added that if I wanted official presence, he could coordinate with local officers in advance. He reminded me that any action would be based on facts we already had: the house papers, the clinic report, the financial records. Reading that message, I felt my heart beat faster. I realized that I was standing at the edge of something. It was not revenge in the old sense. It was simply a return of balance. On the morning of Thanksgiving, I woke up before the alarm. The sky outside was pale and cold. I dressed in simple clothes, a clean shirt, dark trousers. I placed the arm support back on my arm, not as decoration, but because it still hurt, and also because I did not want anyone to forget what had happened, even if no one spoke of it. In the kitchen, I started peeling potatoes with my good hand. It took time, but I did not rush. Lisa walked in, already stressed. She checked lists on her phone, opened cupboards, moved pots. She gave me small tasks with quick instructions. She did not once ask how I felt about the evening. To her, I was part of the equipment. Trent came down later, smiling and energetic. He inspected the dining room like a manager before a big event. He adjusted chairs, placed fancy glasses, and checked that the good plates were polished. He told Lisa that this dinner would show everyone what kind of home leadership they had. He spoke about himself as if he were the anchor of the family. I listened and kept my eyes on the cutting board. Inside, I felt oddly calm. As the afternoon went on, guests started to send short messages to Lisa, saying when they would arrive. The smell of food filled the house. Music played softly in the background. The table looked beautiful. Candles, folded napkins, shiny cutlery. If someone looked only at the surface, they would see a perfect holiday scene. About an hour before the guests were due, I slipped into my room and closed the door. I took my phone from the bedside table and sat on the edge of the bed. My heart beat in my throat, but my hands were steady. I opened the chat with Mr. Collins. I wrote a short line, telling him that everyone would be seated at the table around a certain time, and that this would be the moment when words about who runs the house would most likely appear. I added that if he and any official support were still willing to come, this would be the time. He replied almost at once. He said that he was already nearby, that he would bring the necessary papers, and that he had spoken with a local officer who understood the situation. He said that all they needed from me was a signal. I put the phone in my pocket and walked back to the dining room. My place was already set at the corner of the table, near the kitchen door. Lisa had not even thought about putting me at the head. The head seat was clearly prepared for Trent, with a larger chair and a folded napkin that looked like a small crown. I sat down quietly and watched them move around the room. The doorbell would soon ring for the first guests. The house looked warm and welcoming on the outside. Inside my chest, everything was clear and still. As I adjusted my sling with one hand, I felt my phone vibrate softly against my side. I took it out and looked at the screen. There was a new message from Mr. Collins. He wrote that he was standing outside with company and that they were ready whenever I was. He ended with 3 simple words. He told me to say when. Guests started to arrive right on time. Trent opened the door with a wide smile, shook hands, and led everyone in. Like this was his event, his house, his table. The dining room looked perfect. Candles, folded napkins, roasted meat in the center. Lisa had done a good job. She stood next to Trent, greeting people, saying how happy she was to host Thanksgiving at our place this year. No one corrected her. I sat at my corner of the table with my arm in its sling. The bandage was visible under my sleeve. I could not hold a fork with that hand. My other hand shook a little if I lifted heavy things, so I kept it on my lap and waited. Plates were passed around. People filled them with meat, potatoes, vegetables. The dishes rolled down the table like a small river that split in front of me and joined again after my empty plate. Twice I almost reached out, but the movement sent a sharp reminder from my arm, and I let my hand drop. No one noticed that my plate stayed almost empty. Trent talked the whole time. He told stories about his job, about clients, about how he takes control of every situation. His parents watched him with proud faces. Lisa smiled at him like he was a hero. Now and then, guests looked at me and asked polite small questions. How is retirement? How is my arm? I answered in short, simple phrases. At some point, the conversation shifted. One of Trent's colleagues asked how I had injured my arm. The question was casual, just table talk. Trent laughed before I could speak. He said that sometimes older people forget their place and that he had to teach me a lesson. He told the story his way, saying that I became loud about money and respect, that I acted like I was still the boss of the house, and that things got heated. He used his hands a lot, drawing a picture of a confused old man and a strong younger man bringing order. Lisa added in a calm voice that her husband only wanted structure, that I needed to remember that he was running the house now. She said it like she was describing the weather. Trent raised his glass and said, in front of everyone, that the old man thought he was the boss here, so he proved him wrong. There was a short silence. People shifted in their chairs. No one said anything clear, but no one defended me either. I looked at my plate, then at the table, then at my daughter. I simply smiled. Inside, something was very steady. 10 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Trent pushed his chair back and stood up with the same wide smile he used for all guests. He walked to the hallway and opened the front door. I heard his voice stop in the middle of a greeting. From my seat, I could see the doorway. On the step stood Mr. Collins with a folder under his arm, and next to him 2 uniformed officers. One of them introduced himself as Sergeant Brown. Their expressions were calm and professional. Trent's face changed. The color left it. His mouth opened, but no words came out at first. Sergeant Brown asked, in a clear voice, if Peter was inside. I raised my good hand slightly. He stepped in so that the whole table could see him. The music from the small speaker in the corner kept playing softly for a moment. Then Lisa hurried to turn it down. The officer said that they were following up on a report from the clinic and a written statement about pressure at home. He said that there was clear proof of an injury that matched my description and that my safety as the owner of the house had to be respected. Mr. Collins opened his folder and spoke in a calm tone. He explained that the house papers showed only my name. He said that a formal notice had been prepared, setting conditions for anyone living under this roof. He placed the notice on the table in front of Trent, in full view of his parents and guests. He also stated that my pension had been moved to a protected account, that I was under no duty to support anyone beyond what I wished, and that any further attempt to control me through money or fear would be documented. Trent tried to argue, but his voice cracked. He said that this was just a family matter. Sergeant Brown replied that once injuries and property rights entered the picture, it was no longer just a family matter. Lisa looked at me with wide eyes. She asked if I had done this. I answered simply that I had spoken to people who understood rules better than shouting. I stood up slowly. My chair scraped the floor. Every eye in the room turned to me. I reached into my pocket with my good hand, took out my house keys, and placed them in the center of the table. I said, in a quiet voice, that this was still my house, but that I would not stay in any place where I was treated like furniture or a training target. I said that I was leaving for a while, and that if they wanted a future under this roof, they would speak to my lawyer, not to my arm. No one moved. I walked to the hallway with Sergeant Brown and Mr. Collins beside me. Behind us, the guests sat frozen, Trent still staring at the papers in front of him, his proud speech about running the house hanging in the air like smoke with nowhere to go. As we stepped outside, Mr. Collins closed the door. The music inside cut off mid-song, like someone had pulled the whole evening's cord. For the first time in a long time, the silence that followed belonged to me.